Every organization has data. Every leader has a title. But the ones who actually move people, they have a story. I'm Dr. Rod Berger, storyteller, author of The Narrative Edge, and your storyteller in residence here at CultureCon. And this is a conversation with one of our culture catalysts. These are leaders who understand that culture isn't built through policies and posters. It's built through the stories that get told in hallways, in meetings, in the quiet moments when no one's performing. The leaders you'll hear from in this series aren't just shaping workplaces, they're shaping narratives. And at their core, they're storytellers, whether they know it yet or not. So here's the question I want us to sit with today. Are you the author of your story, or are you a character in someone else's? Let's find out together.
All right. Well, it's so nice to expand the conversation today, that not just where we talk about everything from someone's origin story, but we sort of weave that into the way stories impact the paths that we take, the chapters that we write, the chapters that we co-write with others in a way that really creates our life. And culture plays a big part in that. And I know that some of you know that I am, for 2026, the storyteller in residence for CultureCon. Love the guys, Nick and Zach, and the organization. They're just such wonderful people. It's about the spirit of those people in those organizations and how that impacts the mission and vision, and ultimately how people experience them on a very large scale. So with that, I'm looking at their culture catalysts, and my guest today has a fascinating background and resides in a state that I just absolutely love. And I've been one of several people that have contributed to the bottom line of the state of Maine. An expensive place to vacation, I will tell you, but a wonderful place to vacation. So we're going to talk about what's going on in Maine, and then also passion pursuits that I think are going to be sort of the way of the future when we think about the way our roles are changing through AI and an economy that continues to sort of bounce up and down like some sort of childhood toy or something like that. And these conversations are based on my book, The Narrative Edge, Authentic Storytelling That Meets the Moment. So if you'd like, feel free to go get a copy of that. But it's with great pleasure that I welcome into the show Matthew Caldwell. He's a director of organizational development for the Maine Secretary of State office. A little bit of background on Matthew. He's certified in everything DISC, workplace, and Agile EQ. He played a key role in helping the state of Maine becoming only the second state in the nation recognized as a certified age-friendly employer, which carries real weight when you consider the Maine, by median age, is the oldest state in America. Here's what really drew me to the conversation with Matthew. Not only, we might even talk about this during the conversation, just sort of our off-the-record conversations just leading up to today, and just the thoughtfulness with which he connects with people. But he didn't arrive at organizational development through the sort of traditional consulting or through an executive pipeline. This is what I love. He came up through the work itself, managing a grocery store at Hannaford, recruiting in healthcare at Maine General Health, doing the generalist grind in state government HR, and somewhere along the way, he stopped being the person who fills the seats and became the person trying to reshape the culture those seats exist within. He's built his own framework for the moments that don't fit the policy manual, what he calls navigating the gray. And he writes about organizational culture with a voice that's equal parts sharp, honest, and occasionally very funny. He once described his approach to toxic managers as, quote, tagging them and releasing them back into the wild for research purposes. That kind of humor tells you something about a person, specifically someone who has seen enough institutional dysfunction to know you either name it or it eats you. Matthew, so nice to spend some time with you. And I just love the depth of your background. I don't know why, but it takes me back to the work that I used to do at Vanderbilt's business school, when I would get these resumes from young people, Matthew, and they were so focused on the top of that resume, where they were all the same. And I always wanted to know what was at the bottom of the resume, outside of that they knew maybe Microsoft Excel, or they could speak some language conversationally, right? It was like, what made them who they are, and why would they be appealing to work with? It's easy to look backwards and say, this was the plan all along. How did planning play a role in your own constitution?
As a young person, oh boy, going back to the beginning, go back to when I started at Hannaford. I was fresh out of high school. I had 2 young kids, so I had to plan really quickly every day what was gonna happen. I had to support my family, so never really knew what I was going to do. But growing up, learning what I liked to do by trying different things and getting different opportunities, there's roles I took that I said I would never do, and then I've learned I loved them. And working with folks from all different ages, groups, and backgrounds, helped shape me into the leader, the employee, the teammate that I am.
Would you say that you've always been sort of comfortable in the unknown?
Yeah, for the most part, I would say yes. I don't think it's a comfortable place to be in the unknown. I think the it's a but nobody really does anything in their comfort zone, right? So I feel like that's why when I'm in a situation that I might feel uncomfortable because it's new to me or unknown to me, I thrive. And so then I come up with plans and processes and procedures by including those around me and working with those around me to learn more.
Take me back to the family, to the home when you were growing up. Is it, if we look back, would it make sense that you're in the role that you're in now? That one, you can sort of organize and hold up and be a part of big systems, but
Yeah,
do so in a way that is thoughtful and pays attention to the moments and the people that make up those systems.
absolutely. I think going back to just childhood before the
Yeah.
professional life, growing up in kind of a broken family, separated family. My mother and I and my sister lived in Maine, and my dad moved to New York. So kind of having that separation in family and folks in and out of our lives growing up, right? I think that you get this sense of seeking some sort of control as you grow up. Not control, but community, I guess is the
Sure.
right word. Not that I didn't have that, but it was definitely challenging at times. But growing up, seeking that stable environment and being able to help others find that themselves um, has kind of shaped, I think, how I get it when I got into the world of HR before I got into the organizational development side. I found that was really where I loved. I had a lot of passion for it. Working in my previous roles prior to being in HR, I was like, you never want to go to HR. Like they're like the scary place to go. Who are they to tell me what to do or us what to do?
Right.
But getting to get thrown in some training roles and resource roles gave me a better appreciation for the work that they do. Uh, and it just takes you back to like being the person that maybe you didn't have when you were growing up in leadership roles or growing up in life. I think it all transpires down the line. So I try to be humble in that and when I'm in my role and thinking about others in their current situation and how to help them.
Tell me about the process of finding HR. Like, what was that like for you? Was it that you were sort of in a seeking mode? You were looking for that, like if you had experienced enough professionally to say, I don't know, these are my words, but like, I'm not, I'm
Mhm.
not an operational person by nature, or I'm not going to be innovating around widgets or like, what was it that sort of sent you along this path? Because I always find that people with a similar background, that there's this maybe not a pivotal moment, maybe a series of moments where purpose gets defined. It becomes much more conscious or front of mind for folks. And then they find that, well, wait a minute, there might be sort of a really cool landing spot for me within human resources and or talent management and support.
Yeah, I think starting out my younger leadership roles, I would just bounce from one leadership position to the next, and I was super excited with no plan of where I was going. I just wanted to try it all, and I wanted to go up the ladder, right, and get to and I realized somewhere along the way, I don't know where I realized it. Maybe I ran out of options in the areas that I lived in, and I was like,
Oh,
no, I guess they have this cool role. It's called the associate relations manager. Why not try it? Essentially, that is HR for the grocery store. And so I worked really hard and I got into that role. And I realized very quickly when I was in that role that I really enjoyed the human aspect of the work that we do every day. Like everybody comes to work, they put the grind in, they show up, they come in early, they stay late, they do extra projects. I was that person, right? Like I had been on opening new stores or rolling out new programs or training future leaders and supporting development of other people being used as a resource. But when you're in the role where your role is really managing the human capital of a business or an organization, puts a whole new spin on kind of your perspective changes. You're exposed more to those vulnerable moments that you don't always see. That folks don't see that all the time. When you have a customer that comes in the building, they don't see those vulnerable moments that your employees go through, so they can bring their best selves to work every day. But being able to be part of folks' story was a very humbling experience for me when I had come from the vision of see how far I can go to let's see how far I can help others go and be part of that story. I realized very quickly that that was my passion.
was there sometimes I find that that kind of flip will happen when we ourselves have experienced something where we feel like either a situation or an organization or some entity or human has seen through us. They're not sort of seeing us. And so we become hyper aware of, well, no, hold on a second. Was that for you?
Did it happen for me? I had a few leaders that I look back on, and I'll always say there's one manager that I worked with, and he would always challenge me to think about things differently. And when he did it, I was like, I cannot believe that he is doing this. Like, this is so irritating. Like, why? Why? And it wasn't till I had to go through the situation that he was challenging me with that I'm like, "Oh, I get it now. And he would then we regroup and we talk about it. When I used to, I had you do this task that you really didn't like to do, or this project that you really didn't have excitement on, but now you're like super, you didn't realize your own potential. And he helped me realize my skill sets. I thought I was going in a different direction, right? And when someone sees something in you and they provide you with an opportunity to do something that you don't see in yourself, and then you realize it, I think that's huge for me. The other thing too, I think is myself. I was kind of my biggest critic or barrier growing up. I had kids in high school. I got married when I was 21. Pretty young. Got married, had two kids. Lived the life that I think society had said, like, this is the life that you should live, right? Get a house, have a job,
Check the box.
check all the boxes. And I was doing all that. And it, I love my kids. My kids are my absolute world. I wouldn't change anything. But I realized, through that I wasn't happy with myself. And so through that, I realized I was working a lot of hours to overcompensate for that piece that I didn't really love about myself. I wasn't being truthful and honest with those that were around me. And I eventually got to probably the darkest point in my life, probably in 2019. We went through a divorce. I came out to the world as gay, had to tell my kids that. And so for me, that was my turning point, I think, in my career. So I, at that point, was in the associate relations manager role. And I realized that I had a hard time then showing up for those. Like my job was to take care of other people, and support other,
Hard to
employees.
do when we're not taking care of ourselves,
It's
right?
hard to do it. I started to get burnt out really quickly. Very grateful for the folks that were around me at the time. Leadership was super supportive in my roles, my friends, my family. My kids, believe it or not, were like right there the whole time, super supportive. And I went, I embraced therapy and all the resources available. And that's when I really truly kind of came into my own, was going through that growth phase that one goes through when they attack their problems head on and they work through them. So I spent about a year and a half in extensive kind of weekly going to therapy and talking through a lot of things and learning a lot about myself and a lot about the world around me that my perspective now is nowhere near what it once was back in 2018. So I'm very grateful for that. I think that really refocused me. I quickly realized as I worked through that I loved what I did, but where I was at was as far as I was going to go in the trajectory of where I wanted to go. If I wanted to, the old me would have gone into that old previous role and then worked my way up to like store manager to corporate and from there. And instead, I said, HR is where I want to be. I want to be at the front and center helping employees. I love customer service too. I love working with the public, but the bottom dollar for public service and customer service is your employees. And if they're not taken care of, then your service isn't going to be great. I'm a big advocate for that. So I took a huge leap of faith. I had been with Hannaford for 13, almost 14 years at that point, and I went into the healthcare industry during COVID, which people are like, "You are absolutely crazy." They're like, "What are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I'm gonna work in HR as a recruiter." They're like, "Yeah, okay." And I said, "No, I'm gonna do 'em." And for me, again, that uncomfortableness, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to recruit for a grocery store, but I had no idea how to recruit for a nurse
Would you
or
say that that level of uncomfortableness, Matthew, and I'm taking a bit of a liberty here, so hopefully you take it with the spirit it's meant, but that sort of leaning into those uncomfortable moments were sort of a way to keep you honest, as if it was like a string around your finger as a reminder, like, oh yeah, I've got to do this today when I get home. I mean, I know that sounds trite, but that it almost kept it front of mind for you to be authentic to yourself, as if you were your own, like to your point earlier, you were your critic, right? Is that
Mhm.
fair or foul on my part?
I think that's fair. I was my biggest critic. I think you spend so much time, well, I had spent so many years not being my true authentic self. I think parts of me and what people saw and were presented and how I interacted was authentic. But I think when I was truly honest with who I was, right, and I did all the work through therapy, working out back and trying different things, it forced me to be open and honest and trying new opportunities without the fear of what people might think or that imposter syndrome that we sometimes get, just being completely open and willing to try and do anything. When my life prior was working in an organization that I knew, right? And I hadn't tried anything different. I knew the people, I knew the operations. And
Playing a role in a story that had already been written.
yeah, exactly. And now I'm going out and doing something on my own or that's different than the trajectory that I was on, but in the passion that I was pursuing, which was working with people and supporting. And I thought at the time, and I still loved my job in recruiting, just being able to go out and meet with students and hear their stories and where they want to go and work with folks that at career centers who maybe have just come out of recovery or they're looking to return to the workforce and just kind of learning people's stories and helping find them something, even if it's just something entry level, but they have something and they had nothing before. There's so much more celebratory for that. Those are the moments to me that are more meaningful. You couldn't put a price tag on seeing somebody start to rebuild their life. When I myself had gone through the darkest times, I started to do that myself to be able to help someone else find that in their life in what is for them and what works for them, right? And their passion, not mine. And just being able to be a small part of that was super, super rewarding.
And so then you fast forward to sitting at the state level. And I'm just wondering how you've bundled together those experiences. And maybe the one at the front of the line for me, just in curiosity, would be being a young parent. And I mean, what's fascinating about that, it does feel like there's this sort of great irony because. And I really want your perspective on this, but I'm finding that there's so many people that are really concerned about AI and sort of what is that? What's the implication? What's the implication for our communities, for our states, our regions, our country, the world, and the way in which we think about our economy and the workforce that needs to prop that up? And it's the kind of thing where, and I shared this in a previous interview, I was having a conversation at the soccer field, and there was his dad who he's just a very optimistic guy and very thoughtful. And something is going on where he wanted to share with me that he's very concerned now because he's seeing at this big corporation that everything from the bottom is starting to get wiped away. And it's as if it hit him over the head, kind of a thing, like just this stunning development. And for all of us that have had kids, depending upon how that all came about, it wakes you up very quickly. And if
Mhm,
you're not awake, you need to be because
mhm,
it's not just about you anymore, right?
mhm.
And so I'm wondering how you can take that experience of being a very young parent where that might have been a big surprise or a relative surprise at that stage of your life, in being able to have some level of compassion for people that are starting to wonder whether it's based on anything other than sort of maybe fear or that there's some real data there for them, that their lives may be changing or need some level of an adjustment to, I guess, acquiesce to a very, very changing world. I'm just curious as to the parallels and how you might be, I don't know, like incredibly and uniquely qualified, to be able to have a conversation with people when you think something's going one way and actually you're taking a left turn.
I think moving from the private sector to the public sector, that change was big. And I think when we think about because it's an older workforce, right? In Maine, we have an older workforce in general. So when anything new comes out, a new technology, there's challenges with that. And there's because change is hard for things where we're so used to
Yeah.
doing things a certain way. And I could say from where I currently work, everything is so paper driven. Still, we have folks that walk around with mail totes and they hand out mail every day. And so when we think about streamlining, that makes people nervous, right? And
Yeah.
streamlining includes, even sometimes simple as an email. You're writing an email, it automatically predicts what you're going to say next. You can select tab and it puts the word in there. So, like, I think everything we do has that integration of that AI component. And I embrace the AI, but I understand that those around me are very nervous about it. And I'm careful with that when I'm having those types of conversations about it. I like to say that I geek out on those sorts of like anything AI, whether
Me
it's
too. I guess we're on the same island. I do the
yeah,
same.
I love AI. I think that there's a time and a place. It's not for everything. I think it's being extremely mindful of what you use it for, especially in our roles here, and especially in my role. But I think that there is a benefit to, you think about public service to support the operations or the streamlining of things or the modernizing that is happening around us. It's not going anywhere, is kind of what I tell folks. It's here and it's here to stay. And I think sometimes what we see is that things change overnight with AI and it's like, oh, there's this new tool or there's this new program. I'm always intrigued to learn more and see how it could work if it's something that we could incorporate. But a lot of what I deal with on a day to day or what we deal with here is it's a lot of change management, which is when you think about change management and you think about a process changing alone, let alone a new technology coming in to go with that new process, or the uneasiness and help in seeing somebody navigate that and helping them navigate that change is truly empowering as a leader for me to see somebody navigate through that. In the beginning, they were like, I am not capable of this. And now they're like super excited to show you all the extra work that they've been able to do because they've saved time. Yeah. So I can't really speak too much to private sector. I've been out of private sector for 5 years now, 4 or 5 years now. So I don't know what that world looks like. I've heard stories of what that looks like, but I don't know firsthand. But
Yeah,
it's an interesting world out there right now.
yeah, powerful sort of change is afoot for people. I'm curious because you said you geek out on AI in this way, and like I said, that I'm very much the same. Because of the work that you do and the awareness that you have, and though you're not in the private sector, I would think that there's still sort of there's like a heartbeat that you can pick up on, right? There's a sensibility of sort of what's going on across a state in that way. And I'm just wondering how your thinking has changed as you've been sort of geeking out on AI. When you think about, you see something that's really compelling, and whether that's, and I'll talk a little bit about the nightcap, which is you and your partner's business on the side, which is just a fascinating story in its in and of itself. But that when you see something fascinating with technology, right? I feel like there's sometimes that moment where right after you realize how powerful it is, if you know somebody that that will impact, it changes the color of that experience immediately. I'll give you an example. So last week I had coffee with a friend of mine, and he's been in sort of the web development business for years and websites, all these sorts of things. Well, fast forward, it's literally within 24 hours. I'm messing around with AI and Perplexity Computer and these different things. And I just put in a quick prompt and it redid my whole website, code, everything. I was amazed and I wanted to show my kids this when they got home. But then I immediately thought of my friend thinking, that has to be terrifying because the implications for him and his employees is immeasurable.
Mhm.
And so I would think being in the position that you are, that you see these sorts of things and whether they're directly or indirectly going to impact at the state level, right? I would think that it does change potentially the filter by which you look at some of the technologies and the trends that you're seeing
Mhm.
across the state. Is that tracking with how you might be looking at these things?
Yeah, I always tell my team here too, and the folks that I work with, is it doesn't replace the human aspect of the work that we do. And anything that we use AI technology for, it still needs the human eye on it, and it still needs the human approach to it. Because often, like think of if you use AI to write something, that's not going to write it in the tone you would have written it in. And it might need you to, if you want it to tell you the sky is green even though it's blue, we can get you a great story from AI convincing you that the sky is green and it's not, right? So you just have to be extremely mindful. I always tell folks, be aware that I always say it's a tool in our tool belt. I don't know, I struggle because I think there are times where, we've seen it in the world where it's kind of replaced certain things. I don't see that happening at a state level. But again, I'm not the person to know what that looks like in
Right.
that, but just because I think there, in public service, there's the human side of things, and just in general, and everything we do every day, regardless of where you work, we're human at the end of the day, and the critical thinking still is important, and I think that's super important. But to your story with like the web design, I feel as though there are folks that need to test that before it goes live, and
Right.
it works, right? In that it may look really pretty, but maybe that button doesn't work like it did before. So there's things of that nature. And I think the other piece is too, like when you're, that the high security information that has access to it. It's interesting because it is happening around you and people are talking about it. And I think it's a good mix of folks who are super excited about it. They're like working a ton of hours. They are burnt out. They feel like their workload's crazy heavy. And how crazy is it that we have this great tool that could streamline some things for us and give us some time back in our day? And then you have those folks who are very much like, I don't want that to take my job.
The indirect the balance, yeah. But
Yeah.
what I also think about the indirect nature of it, right? Because you might have someone that, let's say, is working for the state, but they have a spouse or a partner or a family member that is in the private sector or running their own business, right? So this is where it becomes very interesting, and the value of that is only going to increase. Like, we're gonna need more of that rather than less, right? These sort of, when they used to call them soft skills, it's like, no, 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 these are necessary.
Yeah, the ability to listen to understand somebody and truly understand what their needs are and what their, gain their perspective on something before you go into decision making or moving things in a direction that maybe you think that human aspect conversation has to happen. And I think at the end of the day, we all still need to fully understand each other. Um, there's different personalities, there's different approaches. There are different groups of people that have different opinions. And how do you coexist still and bring folks together? I don't know yet that AI is capable of doing that because that human piece does not exist yet. I mean, I'm saying yet because who knows where AI is going to go, right? Like we don't know. But I don't think that that piece of AI is out there, if that makes any sense. Like that is us. We need to do that. And what kind of world would it be if we lived in a world where we didn't sit and truly meet someone and understand them? I don't know the last time that I sat down with a person at work or in life or a client or and didn't take the time to get to know them. I know when we work in the wedding industry and we meet with couples, I am always so excited to learn about their story. Like, tell me about how you met. Tell me what's something that excites you. What's something that really doesn't excite you. If you could have the perfect day, what would it look like? What would really ruin the day for you? Asking all of those questions really helps make sure I can make sure they have a great day if I'm managing their day for them, but also helps me get to know them as a human. So on their most important day of their life, like I'm someone they can relate to. I'm not just somebody they hired and, some random person walking around their wedding. I'm socializing with their family. I've met their mom, their dad, their aunt, their uncle. So when I see them, I'm just like a guest, but kind of leading the day for them. There's a human side that you carry. I carry that same type of mentality and approach every day in my work. I can't help somebody if I truly don't know what it is that they need and what makes them excited, what upsets them. I can't help them if they don't know that about me either. So there's that balance of that type of relationship too. And that's something that you can't get with AI. You can get a lot of great things with AI, but that's something that we need. I think like you said, it's not a soft skill. That's a critical skill that, if anything, we need to enhance. We do a lot of training around emotional intelligence and those what used to be called those soft skills, right?
Mhm.
And when we first started doing them, folks were like very like, I don't know if I need this. Like you talk about emotional intelligence, that's a big word, and that's yeah. And then they start doing the training, like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. I didn't actually think of that. And you see the light bulbs go off, and you see the conversations and the connections start to happen. And it's like, yep, this is exactly what we needed and you see the human side come back out and a world that is surrounded by technology and everybody's on their phones and go through break rooms and folks are sitting in their break room not even conversating with each other, they're playing a
They might
game
as well be in different rooms.
or they're chat GPTing something they wanna learn about, right? Like, there's breaking down those barriers and engaging in conversation and getting to know something about one another and building relationships that live outside of technology. Those relationships don't live in technology. I think of social media too. I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
Like so many of us, right? We just have this there are things that we really enjoy, and then we do you find you catch yourself like, "Why am I enjoying this at this point?"
I know, and then you catch yourself doom scrolling, and it's like, "What am I doing?" Like, I've been on my phone for hours at this point, but it's that crave of attention, if that makes any sense. I see a lot of
Okay.
go for the likes or the views, and for me, those are fine, those are nice. It's like instant gratification that somebody recognizes us, right? But when you're in person and somebody recognizes you, I think that it goes a lot further. And I think for me, just growing up, because of going through life, having somebody actually recognize me for who I am in person, in front of them, and having that whether it's a vulnerable conversation or authentic conversation, whatever you wanna call that, is it goes a long way, and I think when a lot of what I do in the leadership too that we work with when I work with leaders, it's getting them to recognize that, like, it's you can be very deadline driven, you can be very project driven, but don't forget about your workforce that's doing the work every day, and make sure that you're connecting with them, and if they told you a story about their cat, or something that happened in their life, don't forget to bring it back up in the future and say,
It
"Hey,
has meaning to them.
yeah, like, they didn't just tell you just to tell you. It meant something to them, and for you to bring it back up and engage in future conversations about something that they've shared with you in the past, they're gonna remember that, and that's gonna go a long way. So, AI has its place, I think. It's definitely not going anywhere, but it does not replace the importance of the human interaction and relationship building and the strength when there is connection and community. Um
Yeah, I almost think there's an opportunity for those in the culture space to really sort of jump through
Mhm,
because we're fast approaching where, like I was saying, the resume may not matter the same. It's about the skills, right?
mhm,
And sort of the trading of skills in that regard. And so the way to do that is to know somebody's story, to your point earlier, right? If you
mhm,
know their story and you understand what they value, you have an opportunity to really figure out sort of those configurations that might not be traditional, but that's probably the way we're going for what
mhm,
everyone will have a different opinion of that, right? And one thing that I appreciate about your background, and it's sort of bucking the trend a little bit. I mean, look, every profession has its these myths and just sort of these stereotypes, and it's like, human resource and management of that. It's there've been plenty of movies and whatever that are so inaccurate. But what I love is that you have shared your personality and your background in such a way that it actually creates this really wonderful canvas that to me is an invitation for other people to then want to say, "Oh, wait, I'm so much more than my title or what I do from 9 to 5," or,
Mhm,
these sorts of things, or the bullet points on my LinkedIn. And that goes to what we were talking about off air, which is the Nightcap Events and Bar Company, right? So talk a little bit about that, but not just in what you and your partner do with that, right? But how it's changed or impacted your thinking in your daily sort of work in that regard, and understanding those elements that maybe we used to take for granted that people had that were important to them, that actually tell a pretty important story, and it's a chapter like dead in the middle of their story, right? It's not some ancillary appendix item at all. It's like, no, no,
mhm.
no, this is core to them, and there's something of value here.
Yeah, no, I think, working in the wedding industry, you meet a lot of different people where Maine is a wedding destination. So we meet folks from all over. I think we do more weddings for out of staters than we do in staters, just because it is a destination site. And again, getting to know those clients and learning their stories is amazing. And then, in the industry itself and meeting other folks who work in the wedding industry, whether it's a caterer or another planner or a photographer or a DJ, and hearing their story about how they got to where they are, and how they found their footing in the wedding industry. And that sense of community is really, really inspiring. It inspires us to want to do more or to figure out ways that we can even enhance the services that we offer. And then working together, it's a big partnership. When I show up on wedding day and we're doing event management, right? We are one team, even though we might be 10 vendors there on the site of different services. But at the end of the day, we're all here for the same reason, and that's to make this day the most beautiful day of their life, and whatever that looks like. And learning from others about things they have been through and some horror stories. We heard a story last summer about a wedding venue that while they were eating dinner, this huge sit down family style dinner, 200 plus wedding guests outside, the septic was overflowing. And have this person come and, like, they called everybody and their brother based on connections about who they knew in the area, and were able to, before dancing even started, had it all taken care of. So it's knowing it's that community that you build through those connections that you make and experiences that you have together that you're able to overcome that. Had she not known that person, I don't know how that wedding would have gone, but it probably wouldn't have gone the way that it went.
Oh.
But there's just things that happen and you learn from, and I'm big on, if there's a problem, let's come up with a solution rather than sit and freak out about the problem. I think it's easy to do, like, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible. How could this ever happen?" Or my mindset is, "Oh, this is horrible, but we gotta figure out how to get through it," right? And so in that world that we work in the summertime, there are long days, there are long nights. Sitting down during dancing to have our what we call our vendor meal. We sit on, like, we're hiding in the back on a cooler. We're no one can see us, and we're sitting eating what's left of the food, but conversating with the other folks that are working and learning from them and just getting to know them. Not even learning what they do, but just knowing them as a human and then following them and staying in touch with them throughout. It's great. Yeah.
And so would you say that it has impacted in ways that you maybe couldn't have quantified at the outset, your ability to be present with people in your day to day?
I think absolutely, because in those settings, you don't have anything but a choice to be present.
Good point.
You're working with guests that they have questions, they have answers, they have needs, but also in an environment where we're celebrating and it's a joyful, and you have permission almost so in that environment. Not that you need permission, but you have more of an ability, like, to grow connections and learn more about folks where it's welcomed. So here, just overhearing conversations at weddings that, "Oh my God, how have you been? I haven't seen you in so many years. And what have you been up to?" And you hear them having these conversations, and a bystander, like somebody like myself working an event, those are like the best parts too, is like we get to hear, like, I always wonder, like, what does that person do for work? Or how long have, where are they from? Like, and just learning and listening and observing, I think it puts you, I've gained a lot of perspective. I think growing up, we have these visions of who we need to be and what we should be doing and what the world should look like. Firsthand experience, I'm doing that and totally flipping my world upside down and starting over, seeing that in those types of events and learning and being open to other folks and their experiences, and their backgrounds really opens and changes perspectives. And I don't think I'm ever going to be done learning or growing in that field, because I think that I'm always going to meet somebody who is going to teach me something or show me something that I didn't know, or open my eyes to something that I hadn't seen before or experienced before, and to gain a new perspective.
I always like to ask people who work in this sort of ecosystem where no two jobs I think are exactly the same at all. How do you approach, I might call it an audit, but sort of how do you approach reflection and or awareness so that that muscle is working? I think that there's a fine line, right? It's that people that work with those in I think in your industry broadly, they might seek you out for an answer or have an understanding to a broader situation, right? And give them some perspective. But that's a can be a difficult place to be in because you want to obviously be vulnerable, be a good listener. You want to be able to provide information. But I would imagine there are times where you're threading a needle and your ability to reflect with yourself on some semi-regular basis is really key to
Mhm.
being able to sort of be present in the moment, in the time with which that challenge is coming before you in sort of in the name of someone that's working with you at the
Mhm.
state level. Is that fair?
It's very fair. Gosh, I feel a little attacked there. That sounds like my everyday life. Um, no, I think it's a good question because we in this world that we are in, and especially in, the human resources side of things and the people side of managing people and helping leaders support people, no matter where you are, I think it's important to understand that there's sometimes four sides to every story. The story that I tell you, my ex might tell you a different story, right? Like there's different stories to every there's different angles to every story. So I think it's really being mindful to make sure that we don't jump to there's a problem and here's the answer. Sometimes it's really well, not sometimes, most of the time it's really important to just say, let's pause. Let's get back to like I don't need to have an answer for you right now, right? If I don't, let's recircle. Let me I have to analyze things. I'm like I have to be like, okay, this is what happened. This is what they're telling me happened. And I try to put myself in all the players' shoes. If I was in all of the players' shoes, what kind of questions would I have for them? And do I have all the answers to those questions? And I may never have all the answers to all those questions, but can I get the majority of those questions answered to have a better picture of the situation to be able to then help come up with a solution or a potential solution for something if somebody's coming to me with a problem that works in the best interest of everyone, and the business and or client, public, whatever it might be that we're dealing with in the moment. I think that's the approach that I take. I feel as leaders, regardless of what leadership role you're in, that we should be advocates for. I always tell folks I'm an advocate for employees and a resource for managers because at any point in time, and the person that I'm advocating for could be the manager, right? You never know because I'm in
Very
such
true.
different situations.
Is
So
this the navigating the gray, Matthew?
yeah, I love navigating the gray. I love that type of challenge because not everything is cookie cutter, right? And I think we're human and, we have like, for example, you have an employee who makes a mistake or, they're upset about something. Well, why are they upset? Well, I don't know. It's not my fault. Not, managers who still think that's not my problem. They need to figure that out and take care of it. I'm like, no, but like recruitment and retention is a really hard thing in the world we live in
That's
today.
a real thing.
You save that and improve that, you take care of your people. So if they're showing a sign of distress or uncertainty and you haven't taken the time at first to say, "Hey, what's going on?" and you go right to a discipline or account or whatever you want to call it and make them feel bad for that, they're never going to feel comfortable enough to come tell you when they actually have an issue. So it's really important to kind of look at things from all those angles. So yeah, I think it definitely is something that every day is something different. And I think that's what I love most about the work that we do in this arena is what I would call it, is really taking time to get to know the full situation. Um, and the full group of people that you're working with or individuals. I do what I call engagement walks. And it's something I started when I was at the grocery store. When I was in the HR role there, I followed through with that when I worked in the healthcare industry to every role I've been in. And that is me getting up out of my office and I go travel if I'm traveling to remote offices and I walk around and introduce myself if they've never met me before, check in with folks, new employees or folks that have been recently promoted or what have you, and just check in and say, hey, how are things going? And it's not business focused. It is, how are you doing today? Well, I
It's
remember
like getting to know you focused.
yeah, I remember when I did it, I started my job when I started working at the Secretary of State. I remember it was my first week on the job, and I had got up and walked around, and I introduced myself to an employee, and, I said, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And she just turned and looked at me, and she was like, "Did I do something wrong?" And I was like, "No, I'm just checking in, say hi." And she had breakfast at her I remember she had breakfast at her desk. I was like, "Your breakfast smells really good, like, hope you had a great weekend. It was a Monday." And she's like, "Yeah, it's good." And so I kept continuing, even though I could tell it was not normal, I continued. And eventually I'd see her in the hallway. She'd say, "Hey, Matt, how are you today?" And now when I walk around the halls, everyone, we just socialize. And but in the beginning, if you don't do that every day, like it takes time, but they need to know that they have that regardless of leadership role, you have to be approachable and you have to build relationships and you have to get to know your staff and get to know your team. And whether it's your team or a customer, what have you, you have to get to know them. That human side isn't going anywhere.
What's the impact of CultureCon been on you just from a community building perspective? Because I know you were named a catalyst, and I've had a lot of fun sort of getting to go through everybody's bios and just sort of see it's just a really fantastic collection of very unique backgrounds, which shouldn't surprise me at all given just my understanding and knowledge of the organization. But I would think it's really powerful to be around other people that celebrate that sort of navigating the gray.
I love CultureCon. So the first time when I saw it, I think I saw like a video on LinkedIn or something. I was like, "Oh, this looks really cool. Like I should look into that." And I was like nervous to ask my boss. I was like, "Can I go to this thing? It looks really cool." She's like, "Absolutely." I'm like, she didn't even think twice. She's like, "Absolutely. It goes right in line with the work that you do." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went. It was my first time ever being in Vegas. Never tried. Mind you, I had young kids and travel very much. Super nervous to be, but as soon as I was there, it was like I always tell my team here, it's a professional reset, but also an opportunity to network with others who do the same type of work, but maybe not the same content, right? They're doing the same work, it's just different environments. And learning from folks who have even maybe less experience, like in the field, but then learning from folks who have more or completely different work experiences and backgrounds is just so inspiring. And I've taken away a lot from CultureCon to the point where it was just me going. And then I am staying back this time, and the next one, and 2 of my staff are going because I said, "You guys go. You guys need to experience this." So 2 of them are going to CultureCon in Madison in April, and then I have another one going to they're going to the AI one this coming month.
Yep.
That's what I'm going. And then I have another staff member who's going to CultureCon in
In
Madison in
August.
August. I'm gonna be in Spain, or I would be going to that one, but yeah,
Spain, Madison. That's a tough.
I'm like it's funny you say that because we were talking about it, and I was like, I really kinda wish that that Spain trip was a different time because I really, truly wanted to go. But I'll be going in, November, so I'll be going to that one in November. But yeah, I'm super excited. Not November, it's October this year, actually. It's a little earlier. Yeah.
What
It's been so impactful, the things you bring back and learn, and sometimes I feel like we get caught in our little boxes and we're in our own worlds and all we know is what we know, right? Well, you become a product of your surroundings. To me, it's the same thought process. Like you've got to get out and go experience different things in your personal life and your professional life. Okay, I'm going to Spain. I've never done that before. That's super exciting. No idea what to expect. But also in professional life, like when you meet other people who do the same work, but you're expanding your network. I'm huge on your network is your net worth. So it's yeah.
Let me put a bow on this conversation, Matt, and ask you this. I'm curious as I think about the value of working at the grocery store at Hannaford, right? I equate that to experiences that I had working in restaurants for years growing up. And one of the things I loved about that, now at the time it was hard to say that I would use that word, but I valued that every table was a different opportunity for me to learn about my personality, sort of my own radar of how I picked
Mhm.
up on nuance, right? And that is something that to this day I carry with me, and I would like to think, hopefully, that that radar has just gotten stronger over the years. I'd just be curious as to the moments that you may or may not have where if you really thought about it, you're walking in a hallway there at the state of, and you're thinking, I'm sort of walking to the rhythm of what it was like years ago at Hannaford in the grocery store. You wouldn't know it, but inside your mind and the rhythm by which you're walking, you're really bringing that with you.
Absolutely. Everyone goes to the grocery store. You see everyone. Holiday times, it's the busiest time, busiest place to be, right? And you're seeing folks you haven't seen in a long time, customers that know you by name. And it's this big sense of community. Like, yeah, retail isn't for everyone, but the grocery store during holiday time is kind of what brings me back. I will say, if there's one thing I truly miss about retail, it's the holiday season. The 2 ladies stopping in the middle of the aisle to have a conversation about their children. One's in the military, one's off to college, and engaging in conversation with folks and helping them find the things that they need. Even if it is just an item on a shelf, you're helping them find something that they couldn't find and making that experience for them that much better because you could have just walked by and ignored them. And then their impression of you would have been, well, that was snotty, or, like, that's not a good customer experience, right? So, but for me, I don't do it for the checkbox that we're improving our customer experience or our employee experience. I do it because it's a feel good thing that you just, when you do it, I can't describe the feeling. It's just when you can help someone and you can make their day better, no matter what that looks like, you do it. And it's just so rewarding. So when I fast forward to, whether it's doing engagement walks or walking down the hallways, and whether it's at work or even just being a customer myself in a grocery store, right? Now, not being an employee, it's recognizing somebody. You don't know what someone's going through. And sometimes you might be the only person that recognized somebody, or they might have needed that dad joke, and I'm good for dad jokes. Or there's one employee that I'll call to the office, and she always is like, "Oh God, HR's calling me in the office. I'm in trouble." And I tell her a dad joke. And she's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Well, you break up their day a little bit to like," but to me, it's like, that's my humor. I like to have fun. Sometimes it's nice to step away from the day to day and really be human. And back to working on even an upset customer is an opportunity to build a relationship. Those are my favorite customers, was my upset customers. They could have
Because you
had,
would see them flip, right?
yeah, but you don't know, like they
Into a
could.
positive experience potentially.
Yeah, they came in from who knows what was going on outside. They could have just come from the hospital. They could have a family member that wasn't doing well, and they came into the store and couldn't get a prescription, and they're extremely upset by that. Or their family member really wanted something and they couldn't find. Like, you do what you can, and they will remember you, and they will remember that experience, and that experience lives with them forever. We had this customer, I can't remember what her name was, but she was the sweetest lady. She would come in at Hannaford when I was the manager of customer service at the grocery store. She would just sit at the front end and she would socialize with us like it was her place to be.
It
And
was her coffee shop.
it literally was her coffee shop. And she would socialize with us and talk about her children who lived out of state. And, she truly hadn't already, she got her groceries already. She just wanted to, she would observe, she'd sit on the front end to just have conversation. We looked forward to seeing her come in. And when we didn't see her come in on a regular basis, we worried.
Yeah, you worried about her.
Well, is she okay? Like, is she all right? I take that same approach everywhere I go. Like, I build a connection with somebody. If I see them on a regular basis and then I don't, I'm like, oh, I'll reach out to them. Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How you doing? Even family and friends. That is my love side of social media, is if I'm randomly thinking about somebody or I remember something about
Yeah, you can check in on them.
hey, I was thinking about you today. For some reason, odd reason, I had this funny story in my head about that time that we did whatever it was. And they're like, "Oh my God, I remember that too." And then you start having a conversation and you can stop talking. And then it comes, like the benefit of not stop talking, but it pauses and then you could pick it back up. And so that's my love for social media, is the connection that is at our fingertips. But utilizing it in that way is, I think, important versus I hate to chase those likes, but I do like to have conversations.
Well, it's clear to me, Matt, why you were named a catalyst by CultureCon. I think you just have such a rich, valued experience in things that, to me, illuminate what it means to live a life where emotion is allowed to be on the table, left turns, right turns, pivots, and that to me speaks to the engagement walks, feeling comfortable navigating the gray. And I think we're heading towards a future where there's a lot of gray, and we're going to need more and more people that have an understanding systemically about the power of that type of engagement, where it's really what you're bartering and trading are stories as
Mhm,
opposed to something that's transactional. And I
mhm.
think you embody that. But hey, anybody who wants to get married in Maine, you need to call Matt. You can go to the nightcapbarco.com to learn more about what he likes to do on his weekends, and how he and his partner help to bring stories, illuminate stories for those that are beginning a new chapter in their own lives. Together. I want to thank CultureCon. You can go to cultureconusa.org to learn more about the great guys, Nick and Zach, all that they're doing, and the wonderful community of people who, like you said, are so engaging. And once you connect with them, they become your text friends, even for someone like me who's not practicing on a day-to-day basis in the culture arena, but rather the storytelling arena. So fantastic organization. I would check that out. And if you haven't got my book, you can get it anywhere where books are sold. The Narrative Edge, authentic storytelling that meets the moment. I'm your host and storyteller in residence at CultureCon for 2026, Dr. Rod Berger.
Every organization has data. Every leader has a title. But the ones who actually move people, they have a story. I'm Dr. Rod Berger, storyteller, author of The Narrative Edge, and your storyteller in residence here at CultureCon. And this is a conversation with one of our culture catalysts. These are leaders who understand that culture isn't built through policies and posters. It's built through the stories that get told in hallways, in meetings, in the quiet moments when no one's performing. The leaders you'll hear from in this series aren't just shaping workplaces, they're shaping narratives. And at their core, they're storytellers, whether they know it yet or not. So here's the question I want us to sit with today. Are you the author of your story? Or are you a character in someone else's? Let's find out together.